I'll start with the greeting, Togoza. Togoza is similar to Namaste in Anguni language. When I say Togoza, it means be well, be happy, be at ease, and be joyful. And that is how we greet in our shamanic lineage. I am a Sangoma who is initiated as a shaman coming from South Africa, and I've been doing some work with the Makosi Foundation. But I won't speak a lot about that because we're in a social mood, and I'd like to just impart the biggest gift of our shamanic tradition. Ours is rooted within an oral tradition. Storytelling is really central to every journey of our soul being as humans back home. The story of a child begins when you're conceived. And that story is one that is a continuation. In our tradition, our ancestors tell us that when we come to this world, we are both a new being, a new soul, journeying anew for the first time. But we are also an ancestor who is returning, or a soul or a past self who is returning. Within that, each of us have a duality which runs inherently through us. The embodiment of that duality is a friend, really, who is an ancestor. In our wisdom tradition, we believe every single one of you here has at least a single guiding ancestor who is the old self, the knower, the one who carries your gifts, your calling, and your purpose in this time. Having been here for the past 3 months and maybe a week, there's been a very interesting noticing for me around just the cultural differences which exist. You see, growing up, I grew up and I am still a writer. I can at least say that now. I don't have imposter syndrome in saying that I'm a writer. So my fascination was always around the written arts, play with words, all of those beautiful ways of expressing that which comes from your inner way of relating with existence. And I found it beautiful to encounter Shakespeare. Shakespeare is one of my favorites. And my favorite from Shakespeare is Macbeth. I was very taken the first time I read Macbeth when I met the weird sisters, the three witches. Whence shall we three meet again? Just that call, that invitation, it sparked a desire within me to immortalize something which came from within. A simple entrance and an invitation through words, which would carry on for centuries and centuries. And growing up within the context of just the written and that Eurocentric, I guess, culture, socialization, I placed very little value on oral traditions. I actually thought, oh wow, why is it that we as a large amount of Southern African people never thought it important to write things down? And that was something which showed up as a intentional rebellion to anything then that couldn't be proved. See, I was very interested in philosophy, and from the age of 15, with this penchant of writing, and existentialism, ontological philosophy, logic and epistemology, ethics were really my favorites. One of my first tattoos actually from Descartes, Cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. And that was my dream when I went to varsity, to become a philosopher, to become somebody who brings change to the world. I studied at UCT, the University of Cape Town. From a mundane view, it is the best varsity in the Southern Hemisphere and in the top 200 in the entire world. So that really got me like, wow, I'm going to UCT, I'm going to study politics, philosophy, and economics. I'll graduate in 3 years with my undergraduate. I'll go to Oxford to do my postgrad. And after that, I'll go maybe to New York to work with the World Bank or the UN. And then I'll go back to find a place and start traveling Africa and being a developmental economist. See, that's where my dreams and that which I had been given and also accepted led me to. Which brings me to today, this evening. Astrologically, Saturn is stationing and Venus is rising from the underworld. There's a rising of the divine feminine. In our culture, the most sacred space where we connect to source, to spirit, to the higher self, and to our identity is around hut structure, a circular hut structure called umsamo. That umsamo is indlu yaga Gogo. Gogo, which is a grandmother or the grand matriarch. When I first encountered the understanding that the home where shamans all over Africa is a shrine dedicated to the divine feminine, it shifted so much within me and sparked a curiosity. I started to be curious about these stories, this way of being and way of knowing, which I resisted so much. I was like, there's no way I can sit every day at certain hours and speak to thin air around what I'm feeling, what I'm desiring, and that's going to change everything. Yet I'm here, I'm in LA because of that rite of passage. There's so many things I had pursued, and marvelously so, but none of them had brought me here, outside of embracing the essence of who I am. The gift of oral tradition is that it teaches for us to really be present in the here and now. It calls us back to our senses. We journey when our grandmothers tell us of how they lived, maybe say 40 years ago, before the rise of Western pharmacare, how the earth provided for them medicines to treat your common ailments like the cold, headaches. As they tell these stories, you look at the grace and the strength, and you ask yourself, even when the mind is like, but why would I want to go and forage for something when I could click a button to get the very same thing? And then as they speak and share their stories, there was somewhere for me where I realized that all of our collective ancestors learned how to speak from listening to the sounds of nature. Where I am now, I understand that all of our languages, if we study them from a cultural context, we would find that a lot of the phonetic structure mirrors how the wind blows, where it's indigenous to how the birds and the animals communicate. This mimicry, which has brought us to Grace and Martin's beautiful, beautiful home, thank you so much, is an inspiration from nature. Our ancestors of antiquity saw caves, saw tree coverings, arches, and they were inspired to develop their consciousness to where we now have the most beautiful architectural marvels in the world. All of them gifted to us by source. We come from so many different places as we are now in this moment, and we can fly in the sky. Thank you, birds, for your wisdom, for your master teaching around the possibility to dream that one day we may master the flight as they do so effortlessly. When I was studying principles of innovation at Vega, a year after my initiation, that is where an old knowing became an embodiment around all human innovation comes from mimicking nature. And that allowed for me to really just pause and drink in the stories again, the stories of my ancestors, whether it's the Egyptians, the Kemeticians, your Nubian people speaking of chaos and the dark waters and the first rains from the primordial source which brought all life. That's a teaching of spring. Whether I go into European cosmology, ways of being, and I read the creation story of Inanna and the descent. All of our creation stories, or myths, as they're called in this age that we're in, speak of an ancient wisdom of living in alignment with the rhythms and cycles of nature and the cosmos. And it's so beautiful to be in a space where each of us in our own unique way are embracing that. I've shared a bit of storytelling, really picking fruits from here and there, from some of the many trees, abundant trees we have back home, to give you a taste of what storytelling is. But what my true offering to all of you this evening is something which I haven't done since I was in high school, to be honest. And I'd like to read to you a piece of something which I put down. I won't name it. It's just something which really I carry and honors the rising of the divine feminine, the nurturer within us, and the true consciousness that brings us into this world towards it. I'd maybe invite all of us to close your eyes if that's comfortable to you, or a soft gaze. And perhaps taking in a deep breath, filling all of yourself with a sense of opening, receiving, wondrous curiosity. As you continue to breathe, gently calling upon a oneness within self and others. In your own natural pace, bringing your awareness then to the ears to receive. Praise song to Mama Wetu, our mother, the Earth Mother. My first ever woman crush goes to she of the waters. If you're lucky, you'll find her on the rocks, singing a tune of all times in the language of the primordial waters. She who shapeshifts and contorts like the waters she rules and is. She who lives in a womb of a body of mothers. She's an ode to the waters, a giver, a taker, the true alchemist whose presence facilitates all life and processes of creation. Gogo Khanyakude, Oshun, Ama, Neftis, Sujin, Danu, Sezibwa, Nanshe, Nerhus, the Nyami Nyami, Yemoja, Anyuket, Goddess Isis. Crossing the 7 oceans, we find her in the creation stories upon all 7 continents. She carries many names. Her essence remains true and known to those who would return to source in the indigenous tales and philosophies. Her resonance remains beyond space and time. She transcends the limitation of constructs, ethnicity, race, tribe, gender, culture, all these which threaten to sever our connection to the divinity of being. Amaru, Faro, inkosazana yamanzi, Noah, Bila, Akewa, Amphitrite, Shakti, Mamlambo, Ninavanu, ILC. In our state of modernity, our connection to she has become so tacit, threatened to be buried under man-made systems of rule and dominion, divide and conquer. The onslaught led by the hegemonic nature of patriarchy and capitalism. Nkosana, she calls to me. She laughs like the hag she is and scoffs, speaking to me, speaking to us through nature, and she says, I am and will always be. Those who call upon me will receive of my transformative gifts. I watch the state of mankind and ask you to remember the cycle of creation, life, death, life. You are not the first to have forgotten me. Remember the ancient advanced civilizations who in their brilliance allowed ego to swallow them whole. That today you look at the remnants of great Egypt and ask yourself, what happened? Remember me. Remind them of me. I am she, the divine feminine, the wild woman, Mother Nature, the cosmos, you, she who you need now, Mujaji, Mau, Ganga, Navajo, Libya, Atete, Mazu, Nomoi, Aida Wedo, Mami Water, Umama Wetu, our great mother. Towaza. Thank you everyone for listening and for your gift of presence.